Welcome everybody to our Wednesday Zoom and Learn. I do have an announcement. It's a big announcement because starting next week, we will be moving days.
Oh.
From Wednesday to Tuesday. Both Mary Jane Morris and myself have a joint conflict that we've tried to work around and we just can't seem to make it happen. So we're going to move the Zoom and Learns to Tuesdays, same time, same Zoom link. But we'll update everything to say that we'll go live on Tuesdays starting next week. All right, so with that out, so I don't forget about it, Mary Jane Morris is not with us today. It was her husband's birthday this week that they're celebrating, so she could not make it with us. But we do have Tracy here from Granite Escrow supporting.
Yes. And is John in here too? I don't know if John is here.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, no worries.
My name is Tommy Dutcher. I'm with California Title. I'm the area sales manager. And for those of you that we may not have been able to have a chance to talk yet to see how I can benefit you in your business, my contact is right in the bottom corner of my screen there. I also put it in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. But we have a special guest. I won't call it as special anymore. You've now presented multiple times for us. But you do such a good job that we want you back each time for something else. So our guest speaker today is Samantha Hays. Samantha, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but if you could let everybody know your background, who you are, and then you can go ahead and pop into what we're going to cover today as well.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and get the screen started for sharing so we can kind of recap that. Let's see, that should get all that info, get you guys moved over here. My name is Samantha Hays. I have been a transaction coordinator for 18 years. I've been also a licensed realtor, a car forms trainer, and a CTC transaction coordinator. This is what I love to do. It's what I do all the time. I'm full-fledged transactions. And let's see, why is this? I'm sorry, I'm having being cranky on my side too. There we go. So what I'm talking to you all about today, did the screen share over?
Yes.
I'm hoping. Okay,
yep.
Perfect. What I'm here to talk to you about today is calendaring your transaction and planning your escrow timeframes. As we all know right now, everybody is moving as quickly as possible to make their offers look as attractive as possible. And to get that done and to make sure we're managing and setting expectations along with being aware of contractual timeframes and also taking a look at some benefits throughout the contract timeframes, I'm here to share some key dates and some ideas and kind of plant some seeds. I'm probably not going to tell you anything you don't already know, but it's just going to bring it up to a level so maybe you're a little bit more aware next time you're writing an offer or taking a listing.
No, but I think there is going to be things that people are going to take away from this regardless. I mean, we all want to know what the standardized dates and stuff are, but I will tell you that, and the transaction coordinators probably not as much, but not everybody takes advantage of using a transaction coordinator, right?
True.
They should, but they don't, let's be honest. And the ones that I see go smooth are the ones that from the moment they open escrow and that initial email goes out, it is set as a timeline, right? Everything is outlined. Who's involved in the transaction, everybody's copied, and then dates. Like everything is outlined of how it's going to go down because it kind of sets the tone, right?
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the things too, is right now we have our expectations of what are set contractually, and then we also have how things are changing to adjust, and it's really requiring more communication even before writing the offer because we're shortening these time frames. But when you're doing that and not everybody else is ready, say your lender, HOA docs, disclosures, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and failure and frustration. And that extra communication in the front end can save so much time, and it's just really key and crucial. Plus, it's managing expectations. A conflict arises when expectations differ. Well, if I'm expecting that we're closing in 17 days and you're expecting we're closing in 25, we might have a slight problem. So going along with that, moving forward, when you start with your listing, when you have gotten your executed, fully done listing agreement, everybody's signed, you're already going to get some pressure started on you. I know a lot of people tend to say, oh, we'll wait till we'll go into escrow to do the docs, or we'll wait till we go into escrow to get these items. You can't think like that anymore. Everybody's shortening your timeframes up so much to be able to perform. We really need to be working with the clients early to get the documentation we need from them, as well as be ready and review for you as an agent. There's questions on the disclosures that come up that can help you with your negotiations. You can look at contracts differently because you already know what you need to mitigate or what you need to explain to an incoming buyer and see if they want to move forward. It'll help save you a lot of time. Big thing is a lot of the brokers need the RLA uploaded within 2 to 3 days into their systems. It's a requirement. I know at some point, I believe a few of them were even fining agents. I'm going to encourage you to connect with your TC the second you get that document executed. If you use DocuSign, you can CC your TC on the executed listing agreement. I'd also suggest, as Tommy and I've talked about before, getting title involved, making sure you're pulling up your prelims, doing all of our pre-escrows and opening as much as possible. Let's take a look and see about getting the SI filled out for the seller now. Let's get ahead. Do we have an entity involved? Do we need trust certs and declarations from the trust? Do we need articles of incorporation from the LLC that's selling? Do we have to be traveling where we're going to need a power of attorney? These are conversations that need to be had within the first couple of days of your listing to help everything run much smoother. Also, depending on which MLS you're part of, you've got to have that submitted within 1 day of doing your marketing. So are you withholding it to get some work done? Are you doing a coming soon? What's the requirements? And that's another time frame that you've got to be working with. What I do suggest is within the first 7 days of getting your listing started, which we all know right now everything's going so quickly with the short inventory, make sure you're starting your marketing process, your setup for how you do your photos, how you do any of your online flyers, your social media, getting everybody started. Again, connecting in your TC and your escrow and your title. Let the TC get the disclosure started. Make sure that's getting started, get into Glide or whatever system you use, and get all that documentation started. And let's see.
And I'll plug myself there. You know, as soon as agents, as soon as you have a signed listing agreement, I will open title for you to get that prelim started. Some title companies will and some won't, because of course it costs money and time to do that. But I do it for all of my clients so that we can see if there's anything that needs to be taken care of beforehand. And Sam, you just brought up a lot of them. I mean, just because something is in a trust doesn't mean that we don't have any issues moving forward. I ran into one where it was in a trust. However, there were some things done prior to it being moved into the trust that were not done during a transaction, that were uninsured documents recorded, that we had to go back and sift through, and we needed a lot of paperwork to clear them. So, you know, just because it is sitting in a trust doesn't mean that it's going to be a smooth transaction. There could be some things that need to be taken care of before you have a buyer.
Completely. And it's, I think more and more as we have individuals that haven't sold in many, many years, and the process is very different now than it was before. I think getting people started and giving people enough time, plus we're having them move so quickly. So before everything gets shoved into boxes in the garage, let's have these conversations when the docs are still easy to get to and everybody's a little bit calmer and we're not being reactionary, we're being proactionary.
Yep.
Now, once we get into the contract, this is when the fun gets to start. So the only time frame that is business days on the contract is for the deposit. And that's when they have the 3 days to get in. Now that we're not in as many holidays, however, we do have uniquely to San Diego County coming up. We'll have Cesar Chavez Day. I believe it's on March 31st this year. I've got to double check because it moves around. That's a unique non-recording holiday we have. And it becomes the technicality of, is that a business day because other businesses and banks are open, but we can't complete our business because we wouldn't be able to record. So these are things to start having conversations, again, managing expectations, coming to a like-minded mindset of, okay, we all agree we're going to adjust because of this certain situation. Then the other one I've run into a lot with this also is suddenly we have in the contract that it says that it's because it defaults to being wired in. Suddenly people are showing up with checks, and that actually is changing your contractual terms. So addendums need to be drawn and other things. So you're adding more and more time to these escrows that we're trying to move so quickly through. So you definitely want to make sure you're communicating and clarifying and following up and talking to your clients as you're filling out these items. We think and see contracts every single day, and we don't always remember to that other people don't, or they haven't been in a transaction in so many years. So we have to stop and talk people through it. I know I speak wind forms sometimes. I have to remember not everybody talks in code with a lot of this. The other things that are 3 days, and now these are calendar days, not business, that the HOA docs need to be ordered and paid for. This is another item that while you're taking that listing and backing out, making sure that we get to find out how many HOAs do they have? Is there a sub-meter electrical? Do we have something special just for the swim and tennis? Conversations and getting documents together. Finding out HOA turnarounds, also the fees too. It can shock a lot of sellers. There's an upfront fee that maybe there may not be some liquidity there to take care of with what else that's gone on in COVID. You need to also provide for your RCSD the support documents. A lot of times I'll hear, we'll get that from escrow when I ask for a trust certification or declaration page. But if you look at RPA 19, that responsibility falls on the party signing on behalf of the entity. They, within 3 days of acceptance, are to provide to the other party. So if it's buyer or seller, whoever's signing on behalf of an entity, and to escrow, proof that they have that signing authority. The RCSD is just clarifying the name of who's signing. It doesn't show that there is signing authority. And I have run into, and I know Tommy and I've talked about this many times, I've run into situations where they say, we'll just use the doc that's filled out in escrow. That wasn't complete nor correct. We had a second trustee show up at the end, and we shouldn't have closed that file because we didn't have everything fully executed.
Yeah, let's pause there for a second, because when we won't go into detail because we did do this training last week, right. But ultimately, as an agent, when you're taking that listing, hopefully you're pulling the profile. If you're not, please call me so that we can at least get you the grant deed of how the grant deed is and who owns title to that, right? If it is in a trust, great, but we need to also go one step further during that is find out who the signers are, meaning, you know, who has the rights to that trust to be able to be a signer on it. Is it in a trust and there's deceased people involved, things like that, because that also plays a part. And it's a lot easier to reach out to your escrow officer and or title and find out, hey, how should my contract be written so that it's right from the get-go and you don't have to have addendums and everything else to go along with it, than it would be to try and fix it after the fact, right? If you go in prepared, it makes things a lot smoother. And as far as the trust certs, I mean, on the title perspective, we've had a lot of issues where agents have taken amongst themselves to get a trust cert, notarized, things like that. It's easier to allow your escrow officer to set that up and just have it signed with everything else, because then everything matches and it's all done correctly. And you're not having to do things twice, because in most cases, about 70% of the time, that trust cert will have to be redone.
And the one we're talking about for this is specifically it's the declaration or certification page within the trust. So nothing should be newly generated. It's actually part of the trust that's created specifically for purchasing or anything showing signing authority on behalf of the entity. So I agree with Tommy. I know we're all rushing, but we also need to let everybody do their best skill set and stay within their parameters of what their responsibilities are too.
Correct.
The other thing within 3 days is your down payment verification and prequal. And I run into this a lot too, where when items are sent over with the original offer and then you get into countering stages, the prequal and the verification are no longer attached. So I know for myself, and a lot of times trying to connect to escrow and everybody else, we don't know who's doing what. So you definitely want to make sure that that information is shared to all parties involved in the transaction. Then we have 7 days to get the statutory disclosures. We need to provide any lease docs if you have any tenants that are transferring. That's also dealing with your solar too. Or if you have anything, if you've leased a solar, you've got a water softener, if you've got an alarm system, anything that's going to, some of the dish networks and things, if stuff's leased, we need to know about that and find out, is the buyer assuming, is that going to be ending with this transfer? We also need the NHD, any of your environmental guides that come along with that. Is it part of an HOA that needs to be disclosed? Material facts, that includes if you've fallen out of escrow previously and they are per contract, the buyer's supposed to provide all those contracts, or excuse me, all the inspections, those need to be provided. Or did we suddenly find a water leak in the last round of rains? all these types of things. The prelim is due within 7 days, and so are the HOA docs. So again, that backs up into, by looking at your timeframes when you start your listing and backing it out, we can be ahead of this because you've already involved title, we've already called the HOA, we found out turnaround times, and we can get everybody involved and ready to go early.
Yeah, and I would almost, go back there. I would almost move the HOA one right now up to the 3 days. When you're opening escrow, make sure they have all that information, who the HOA is, et cetera, because right now some HOAs are taking 3 weeks turnaround to hit a print button and send the docs. I mean, it's crazy, I know, but it's happening. I had one in Orange County last week. It actually took 3.5 weeks to get the HOA docs, and they were ordered on day 2.
Which is a huge reason why, because these are the default contractual timeframes. And even so, as knowing that, that's why if you can even get your seller to order them or talk to escrow or find out what we need to do to pre-order, it's super important. So that's with these reduced, when you're saying, oh, well, you have 7 days to do all your investigations. If the seller can't perform within those 7 days because you haven't prepared your file,
Right.
You're setting everybody else to just keep delays and delaying, and we're not managing those expectations.
And what about septic too?
Yep.
Because that, I get that one all the time where they say, well, we're not going to do the septic until everyone's removed their contingencies. But it's part of the 7 days.
If your depending on how your contract's written, how they wrote it, if they did the SWPI to include it in, or if they said the other, it's material fact because they need to review it. Now, granted, the certification and the pumping, that's something that is to be done depending on, again, how your contract's written. That just has to be done prior to close of escrow. But you're right that we need to be able to see, is it cracked? Do we have to, is there a leach field issue? Are we meets and bounds and defining boundaries, especially with more people moving out to larger properties? You're totally right. We're looking at things where I've got people going from HOAs into now they suddenly have septic, and it's a different world. And there's a lot of things that have to be explained to them that they've never had before.
And I have some agents when they go in for a listing right now, because things are moving so fast, that they're encouraging the seller to just go ahead and do the septic cert and stuff, knowing that you are going to move forward with selling this, and in most cases, it's going to need to be done. So, do you want to wait to find out? Most people are not going to waive septic. But even in this day and age, if they did, it's probably in your best interest to go ahead and have it done and just have that cert ready, right? Because people are extremely busy right now. So depending on where you're at, I had one in Wrightwood last month, 3.5 weeks to get somebody out to pump it. And that was calling multiple companies. So.
Well, and it's a trickle down theory. I mean, if we're busy, then everybody who supports what we do. So
Correct.
You've got agents and the market's busy, and then you've got all the support staff because not everybody brought people back on or COVID, you're running on different size teams, and then going from there, it trickles down. So again, things you have to take into account for your planning right now. Okay. And then going on to contingency removals. So right now it's 17 days for all but loan. Again, these are defaults in the RPA. 21 days for the lender. In the new upcoming RPA, the last draft that I looked at this morning, everything is going to be 17 days. So that's just something to keep in your mindset, start getting used to.
Even loan, huh?
Even loan.
Nice.
So one of the things with this to be aware of is, it's an active removal in California, but different people are doing different things right now, trying to get offers in. And when you're saying you're going to do this in 10 days, make sure everybody knows you're doing this in 10 days. When you do that opening letter, or you're saying, hey, I've got a new escrow, I would be very clear and let everybody because our brains go to 17 days. That's what we all do. We all know for the contracts. If something's shortened, over communicate it, over anticipate people not, being on board, or at least I shouldn't say on board. Anticipate people just being as busy as you are and making sure that over communication is never going to hurt anybody right now.
Yeah. Include your lender.
Yes.
Don't agree to something with your client without checking with the lender to make sure it's even possible from their end.
Very much so. And especially if suddenly they can take it in the trust. No, we can't take it in the trust. No, we're putting your wife on. No, we're not putting your wife on. All those things. Let's double check them before and get the support staff and all the vendors and everybody, knowing that it can be something you can contractually perform with before we put it into contract or start talking about reopening negotiations with addendums or requests for repairs and how you're going to handle credits and such.
Correct.
So then we have 5 days prior to close. If you have any tenants in the property, they need to vacate. I just ran into this on one of my transactions. It was a sale that had been in the property for 8 years. I said the agent unfortunately assumed, well, we're under a sale, we can give them only 30 days notice. Well, it has to be a naturalized person. This was an LLC purchasing, so we had to change our time frames. We're concerned because a lot of people don't have places to go and the rents are not the same as they were 8 years ago. Make sure you're finding out and you're following up and staying on top of. If you've got a listing and you've got to get tenants out, you need to make sure you're doing your documentation properly right now. You need to make sure you're double checking all the COVID requirements. It's going to be one of those things you're going to have to stay on and keep following up with them. You can't assume the tenants are just going to vacate because they've been told these are the time frames. Also, any repairs that were supposed to be that have been negotiated, they are to be completed and receipts are to be provided. You need to show that they are paid for and done. And then that's your walkthrough. The whole point of the walkthrough is to verify any of the repairs or items were done to the property.
Well,
Now, I'll go for it, Tommy.
no, go ahead.
Just outside of that, we have additional things to pay attention to that don't have to do with the RPA to also throw in. You have 3 days from receipt for your closing disclosure. So if the closing disclosure goes out late because they didn't get all the info, the lender didn't get the info they need from escrow, we've now got 3 days, and they don't count Sunday for their business days, but they do count Saturday. What is that changing of your time frames? If you're late with your agent's visual, did you know that per the contract, when you put on TDS page 3, see AVID, but you don't include it, and you do it 2 weeks later, that TDS did not become valid until you provided that AVID, and then that's 5 more days to extend out your contingency. So the SBQ, same thing. If it's not fully executed, if you got missing questions, till that's done, 5 more days. Also, things to be aware of that we've got to get done before day 17. You've got to have your request for repairs, and if you're going to be submitting one, seller doesn't even have to respond. You need to make sure your appraisal's done, make sure all of your inspections. What if, you want a foundation, a roof, as we've been talking, getting people scheduled, making sure everybody's on board and available. Solar transfers, as we all know, that's becoming more and more of a thing, making sure that can your client assume it? Have they been approved by the solar company?
Let's
So
talk through this one for a minute, because we're theoretically right now, we're talking about 17 days. We're not in a perfect world right now. And most of those 17-day contingencies are more in lines of 10 or less. So keep in mind all this stuff when you're trying to be a competitive offer and you're writing in, all inspections and contingency removals for the first contingency removal done in 7 days or 10 days, that all this falls even shorter, right? And that solar transfer seems to be one that tends to linger because people think, well, that's part of the lending side of making sure that's fine. No, it's not. That is part of doing your inspections and making sure that everything is fine except for loan approval.
Well, and it's more and more, it's unclear. I've reached out actually to one of the solar vendors directly, and I know other people, I believe there are a couple more webinars coming up. I just feel that it's still not clear who needs to be doing what. I definitely, after Mary Jane's class has helped me moving forward, that I definitely am bringing it up sooner. And as soon as I see that, okay, where's the paperwork? Have you been in touch? What's going on? And it's definitely something you want to be pushing on. Again, similar to with tenants and things like that, there's so many moving parts that we typically don't work with that we need to be do our due diligence and just follow up even more. Client availability. Is anybody traveling? Are the sellers traveling? Are the buyers traveling? Are you traveling? Is anybody traveling during the transaction? What's the plan? Will they have internet? I mean,
or are they out of the country?
Yeah, are they out of the country? I sat at the base of the Acropolis on my phone answering an email one time, but I know it's available, but it doesn't mean everybody's got the tools, wherewithal, or wants to do that. So we need to be communicating again and asking, will they be doing any traveling? Do they have a deadline where they need to be moved or in the new location? Rent backs. What's going on with the rent back? Did you buffer in enough time for your client to leave wherever they're leaving to move into the property while you're letting the seller stay back? Did you plan around a weekend so that there's enough time that they've given notice at their rental, but the seller will be out, so they've got 3 days to get in? Things like, it's really, you've got to start, it's a lot of moving puzzle pieces, and it's a lot of coordination and making sure you look at the whole big picture. And really, again, it circles back to that, just communication and asking questions. I don't think in this market right now anything can go wrong by asking what about this scenario, or what about, I know we all want to be the brilliant realtors that you are, but sometimes we just got to get stuff reclarified, and questions are a really great way to keep that communication going. Holidays.
While we're on rent backs, let's kind of, because rent back seems to be a bad word right now, right? During COVID, the CARES Act's been extended through the end of June. And that, so that those of you that don't know what that is, but part of that is the eviction process and stuff has been moved back to the end of June. So rent backs are a bad word right now, right? Because anybody who wants to take that liability could put themselves in a situation that is not good for them. If the renter decided for whatever reason at the last second not to move and you closed on that property, there's nothing they can do until the end of June right now. We don't know if that will even get extended. And, trying to evict somebody right now is impossible. So you're there to protect your clients. Keep that in mind, of making sure that you understand all those dates and what's possible and what's not, and try not to put them in a situation that, that can hinder. It's probably better not to do a rent back and just push the closing. I know I was going back and forth, not I personally, but a file last week in regards to this, where they didn't want to push the closing because why? Interest rates were talked about raising, and now they're going up, and they were only locked in to a certain date, and they needed to extend that, right? Unfortunately, is the seller was not, or the buyer was not willing to risk the renters not moving, right? So they were willing to pay that extra fee to extend that lock, which was probably good on their part, because you don't know what will happen. Tenants right now can say everything's fine, but what if they lose their job tomorrow, right? So keep that in mind when this plays a part, because it's playing a part more often than not right now, I'm finding. I personally just sold a house where there were tenants involved, and my tenants were due to move out by a certain date, and the buyer wanted to move the closing date up, which ultimately wanted to move it up to the day after my tenants were supposed to be moving out, which didn't leave a whole lot of time to clean and, them do a walkthrough after things are out of the house, things like that, under contract. So we had to make sure the documentation was done to give us an extra 5 days to possession and things like that. So it did close the day after the tenants were vacated from the property, and we would have held off from doing that if it didn't happen. But ultimately, it was a mad dash to get everything else kind of done in the last, 3 days after that, so they could take possession.
Well, and what you're talking about too is more when we've got tenant in possession, where the rent backs are also a lot of times where we have the seller staying after close of escrow because they can't find a replacement property yet, and similar to that, SIPs are usually better because you're at the 29 days. You haven't gone to tenancy, but I am seeing more and more where they're needing 45. So you're switching over, like you're saying, and then we have the whole issue that suddenly we've got a buyer and a seller, and they become landlord and tenant.
Yeah.
And then also we're going into, are we dabbling in loan fraud because we said this was primary residence, and you've got to talk to your lender because over 60 days, that gets into a gray area. Is this currently a primary residence? Have we not been factual with the lender about what type of transaction this ends up being?
Yeah.
Again, yeah, my job, the way I look at my job as a transaction coordinator is to be a paranoid freak about some of these little things that everybody else tends to poo-poo, but it happens. I've done 6,000 deals, and Tommy, you and I both, we've got horror stories because we've seen stuff because of what all we're involved in. And then lastly, as we were talking about, we don't have as many right now, we've got a little window of time, but you will have that weird San Diego recording, or I believe it was Riverside County was actually closed 4 days for the President's Day weekend. So you definitely want to take a look, excuse me, and know what are the local, what are the federal, is there any religious ones coming up that will affect your clients? Do they need some time to, that's how their family celebrates and they will not be available for any signings? Communication, let's take a look at, let's sit down. You want to close in 30 days. Okay, let's look at the calendar at the same time and just kind of space it out to see what's coming up. But that's pretty much some of the main ones that I could think of. I know everybody's got their own experiences and have seen different ones. When I look through the latest revision of the new RPA, really the only major time frame change currently, subject to any other revisions they're doing, would be that the contingencies will all be 17 days, not 21, not have the 21 for the lender anymore.
And when we open this up, those of you, because we have about 20 people on here, those of you that are on here, if you have anything that you do that helps you stay on track during your transactions, that is any different than what was talked about, because we didn't really go into much detail, but I think most agents that are on top of it and transaction coordinators, when it starts, that initial email is basically a timeline, right? The whole body of the email is like, day 1, day 3, day 5, day 7, right? Et cetera. And they literally paint the picture. And by painting the picture, it sets expectations, right? So there should be no question when all of a sudden you're reaching out on day 16 with, hey, tomorrow's day 17, I need your SR1 or your CR1. And if you set the expectation in advance, there shouldn't be a wall or barrier. It should be, hey, you knew this was coming and we're sticking to the timeline. So there's a process for that. So I'm all about setting expectations, especially when you have so many moving parts, because then there's no surprises, right? Doesn't matter if you're dealing with an experienced agent or a very first transaction agent. If everything is outlined out and the expectations are set, it makes things smoother. So if there's anybody on the Zoom right now that has certain things that they put in place that they feel is worth sharing that could help another agent have a smoother transaction or get past certain hurdles, by all means, that's what this is for. Let's all share.
And I did upload the car timeline of events, the current one for the current contract, into the chat for everybody as well.
Perfect. And if you don't want to unmute and talk, if you have noise in the background, feel free to put it in the chat and, we'll share it for you. But I think everybody kind of has their process. Hopefully you do have a process. And if you don't, you can maybe take something from here. Tracy, do you have, or Sam, do you have a standardized template that you use for an initial opening of an escrow? Like, I'm sure you have some agents that send it to you and say, open this, right?
I used to, I'll be honest, I had stopped sending out the timeframes because it was causing so much challenge between all the different sides when we were first doing things. Now that it's being clarified even more in the new contract of what date of acceptance is, I'll probably go back to it more so. My biggest thing is I send out reminders constantly throughout the transaction. Hey, we're this many days. Hey, we're this many days in. What do you need? That works better for me personally. But I do agree that having calendars are always great for everybody as well, so that you see it once and then I like to keep nudging.
I mean, I have different agents that do different things, right? I have some agents that have an email drip, standardized email drip that automatically gets started with their clients on day 1. And an email goes out the day before each thing is due to happen and just says, tomorrow is day 17 and they should be removing their first contingency. So I'll be following up with that, et cetera. That kind of keeps the client engaged on what's going on without having to pick up the phone and let them know. I have some people that have little video messages that they've already recorded for each step and they send it out to their clients. And I have some that will take that email drip that they put together and physically put the other agent on it because it's a general drip that they've created for every step of the way. That's just kind of Jarrett that says, this is an automated message and they started that way. So,
right.
This is an automated message that tomorrow is day 17. First contingency removal is due, blah, 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 blah. And it's just automated that they start on day 1 of the transaction. And their CRM just handles it, right? Sam, the RPA timeline event, I think you sent direct to me only.
Oh, that's not
And
good.
maybe you can change that and send it to everybody.
Well, and
Lucy,
just
do you
on
have
that
anything
note,
to
Sorry
share?
about that.
I just wanted to say that my escrow officers, with the system that they use, they set up tasks and reminders. So the bottom line is it allows them to be proactive, and to call the agents and make those phone calls. I know that that is one of the biggest compliments we receive, is that our escrow officers actually call the agents, because and email. You know, it's a combination of both. And at the end of the day, they really like to honor, when they're working with each particular real estate agent, really meet them where they're at. Some only want to be emailed, some want to only be called, some want, you know, everybody has different needs. So we like to set that up in the beginning to set everybody up for success. So we have the communication flowing so that we can be proactive. If anything is, you know, if they have any, you know, see any red flags, that they can, you know, be sure to communicate effectively and efficiently with the real estate agents and clients, so that we have a successful escrow and smooth closing, or, you know, smooth escrow and successful closing. And one thing that we do, that we are doing more and more with listing agents, when they get their listing, once that ink is that deal is signed, we are pre-opening escrow, you know, which I know, Sam, you talked about at the beginning, everything from, you know, pre-opening escrow to really look and see what's going on, because sometimes there are surprises that the owners don't even know, right, Tommy, on title, that it's like, holy smokes, we didn't know we had this or that. So or pre-ordering a HOA, depending, you know, because I know it does cost with HOA, but there's a number of things that they're able to do. So once they get that buyer, they're, you know, minimizes any surprises, shall we say, so we can have a successful experience for everybody, right?
Yeah, and you know what, you kind of hit something there, because I did mention earlier that, you know, for my agents that I work with, I open, you know, a prelim as soon as they have the listing. We're not waiting until we're in escrow.
Right.
Majority of the agents I work with that work with a standard escrow officer, I'm linking that escrow officer to that open order. I call it a pre-listing, right?
Yeah.
So a listing prelim, I'm attaching the escrow officer to it, so that if anything comes back, they're copied on it. Not only are they getting copied on the prelim as soon as it comes out, and they can start building their file, but if we notice anything in the mix that's being taken care of, the escrow officer's kind of kept in the loop the whole way, so that when they do get the open order to go into escrow, they're already 3 steps ahead, because they already know what they're dealing with on the listing side, right? And so we may be in the process of taking care of certain things or getting certain data, et cetera, but they're kept in the loop. And then when they open that escrow with my title unit, all that they're doing is flipping the switch from a listing prelim to a sale, and everything remains the same. And we just move forward from there. But it just makes for a smoother transition, so that when you do have a buyer, you're not pushing back on the buyer going, oh, we need to move our timelines because of X, right? You know, going into it exactly what your hurdles are going to be for the listing side. And that makes things a heck of a lot smoother, you know, going into that with a buyer.
And Daryl, let's see here. Daryl Self put a note in the chat. Is it possible to do a seller's estimated net sheet prior to the listing appointment? Absolutely, Daryl. And that's such a great point, because
Daryl asked that. Daryl, Annie does that for you almost every time, doesn't she? I'm giving him a hard time, but.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. You know, Annie, I didn't know you worked with Annie, but she can put together for different price points. You know, that's typically what my team in San Diego does, so that, you know, you can, you know, because there could be a range of price points, but then you're set up for success, and your client is understanding what their closing costs will be.
Yeah, Daryl, I think we're on the same page. As if you send it to Annie and you send it to me, one of us are going to get it back to you. And if you just let us know the criteria, what price points, we'll send you multiples if need be. Joel Perez also asked, when preparing any addendums or amendments, what date of RPA, the day of signing, of the original date is used.
You actually use the date on page 1 that you initiated the contract. Same thing would be when you're doing your counters or addendums. You're going to do what date it was created, and that's the date that started. So on the RPA, for the addendum, say you're doing a price reduction on the RPA, you're going to do addendum 1 to RPA dated, it was signed on May 1st, is the address that's, or excuse me, the date that's on the upper left-hand corner of page 1 of the contract.
Okay, so you, see if there's anything else in here. I'm just checking real quick.
If I could say something, my name is Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. Also, as transaction coordinators, that's what I am, a lot of us have systems that can link to your Google Calendar. So I know for my agents, I link my system to their Google Calendar. So when I put a date in, it goes to their calendar. They get notified on anything that they want. If you don't use a transaction coordinator, you can also do this in zip forms.
Mhm.
You can link it to your calendar. You can add the dates into that cover sheet, which is like so awesome in zip forms. Put all your dates and everything in the cover sheet, and then that'll tell you when things are due and whatever. So if you're only doing 1 or 2 transactions and you want to handle it yourself, you can do it through that.
Beautiful.
Rad.
All right. Anything else that anybody wants to share in regards to how it can make, you know, an agent's life easier, or a TC's life easier, escrow's life easier, title's life easier during a transaction?
I did throw in, I made an RPA menu. This is based off the current contract. It'll need to be updated, but I threw that in the chat as well, that breaks it down into the different things when you're looking at contracts and kind of gives you a shortcut. So feel free to use that, share it, whatever. It does, it's not the same as a calendar per se, but it lets you know when you're looking at a contract where to shortcut if you need some help real quick.
Perfect. All right, so before we end, just another reminder, because some came on a little bit late. Starting next week, we will be moving to Tuesdays, same time, 12:30, same Zoom link. And we will be on Tuesdays moving forward, not on Wednesday, okay? And if for some reason, I mean, we're not locked on that. We moved it to Tuesday, but if we have a lot of feedback that, you know, Monday may be better, then we may move it. But I think for the most part, Monday, people are coming off the weekend and they're fairly busy. And Thursday, Friday, they're getting closer to the weekend and they're getting too busy. So we want to try and keep it in that Tuesday, Wednesday mark. And so that's why we moved it to Tuesday. Okay. And Sam, do you have anything further to add?
No, I'm happy to help anytime. Tina's an amazing TC if you need one. I will talk this stuff till I'm blue in the face, even if I'm not on the file. So feel free to give me a call.
Same as I will put my contact in the chat as well. If anybody has any questions, I'm always free. I answer my phone. By all means, give me a call. And unless anybody else has, oh, hold on. I think we have a question. Okay, so Joel asked, what docs are handled by the TC and which ones does the agent do? You want to just give an overview of what you do as a TC, or if another TC wants to pipe in?
I mean, basically the way I look at it is anything that's dealing with negotiations, contractual changes, or will affect your commission, that's on you. I will assist with processing, obtaining signatures on disclosures. I look at my job is to get you a defendable file. So it's mainly on you for the documents, but I'm here to make sure that we can prove that if you have to go to court, you've got a defendable file and you've got everything meeting broker and DRE requirements.
Hopefully that answered.
And if not, Joel, feel free to, I'll put my number, feel free to give me a call and we can discuss it further. And if I'm not a great match, I know how to get a hold of Tina, or we can get you on to a bunch of other TCs. So we definitely can get you the right people.
All right, guys. So
Okay.
thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week on Tuesday. And if we can be of any service in the meantime, feel free to reach out. You can find me at Tommy for Title. That's TOMMY, the number 4title.com. All my contacts there. You can text me from there. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Have a
great
good one.
day. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.